Welcome, everybody, to episode 138 Wire to Wire Sports Podcast. You are looking at the one-pitch champion of the world. Or, I don't know, Warrington. But welcome to the episode 138. In my upper left corner, I got Kent State's own, Cleveland's own, College Cottrell rocking the Browns tee.
Absolutely. What's going on, fellas? This glorious Wednesday.
Glorious. You know why it's glorious? Because the Boston Celtics were eliminated. That's why it's glorious.
That is always glorious when they have to watch their team not playing.
Yeah, I don't care who wins the finals. We'll get into that in a minute. In the upper right corner, I'm gonna do this just for Cottrell. The man, the myth, the legend, Uncle Shally, Scholastic Shally. What's happening, Bill Shallcross?
What's going on, boys?
If you guys don't follow our inside joke, it's okay. But it's funny. And I do it all the time, and it's okay. It's just my friend Bill. But we got a lot to get into this show. We got a ton to talk about. We're going to talk about the NBA Finals. We're going to obviously recap the Boston's almost 3-0 comeback. We'll talk about that. Game 7. James Butler. I know his name's Jimmy. James Butler, grown man. But listen, I will say this. I don't think, and this is a little foreshadowing, I don't think he should have won Eastern Conference MVP. I don't think so. And, you know, I looked at that series. I watched that series. And a guy that I've always been high on, a guy that I always loved, from the days of Nevada when he was running with his brother Cody, Caleb Martin was in fuego in Game 7. I loved. So let's talk about the series. When we talked to you last, it was 3-1. Game 5 was happening that night. A lot has happened since then. Game 5, Boston won. Game 6, and I want to get into that because it's really controversial, and it would have been my you got to be kidding me this week had Miami not have won the series. The Game 6, I felt like there was a little funny business with the time. They stop it with 2.8 seconds. They put it to 3 when in reality the foul was called at 2.5 to 2.6. The clock doesn't start immediately when Marcus Smart touches the ball. It's delayed about 0.2 of a second. And why does all this matter? Well, it matters because Derek White, with one of the greatest tip-ins ever that will never be remembered because the team did not win the series, but tipped it in with 0.1 seconds left. Did you guys have any issue with the clock? And it was in Miami, so the clock operator was in Miami. Did you have any issue with any of that down the stretch?
I will say I had an issue with the clock in general that game. I don't remember seeing it. I didn't catch the Marcus Smart touching the ball and they started late. I didn't catch that live. But when Jimmy got fouled, I think they had brought it all the way down to 2.1. And so for them to add pretty much a whole second back onto the clock, and that hardly ever happens in that kind of situation. Like 0.5 of a second, maybe, but a whole second go by before the clock operator stops it. I thought that was a little crazy, but I was right there with you. I thought it was stopped about 2.5, 2.6. So when I saw 3 seconds on the clock, I was like, okay, well, I guess they're giving Boston, just a little bit extra leeway. But then it turned out to matter because we saw, obviously Marcus Smart missed a shot. But like you said, Derek White got the tip in and there was literally only 0.1 seconds left on the clock. So every 0.1 of a second mattered in that game. So, and I had kind of almost forgot about it up until, you brought it back up. But I remember in the moment thinking like going from 2.1 seconds all the way up to 3 just does not seem right, like ever. So I definitely noticed that live though.
I noticed it too. And I said something about it and once again, it will be forgotten and it won't matter because Miami won the series, and we'll get into that in Game 7. Shally, any issue with the clock operator? Any issue with the way that got played, where they moved it to 3 seconds?
Yeah, I mean, this takes me back to the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's annoying that they're now going back to replay when the game's on the line at the end and they're going, oh, well, it should have started here and should have stopped here. Like Cottrell said, I think we're all used to kind of them seeing, okay, like human error, margin of error, probably like 2 or 3/10 of a second. It just didn't click on right away, or maybe they stopped at a 10th too late, like stuff like that. They put almost a full second back on the board. Like that's crazy. I think it's setting a weird precedent. I think they're slowing it down so much that they can look at it and be like, oh, well, the clock operator should hit the switch here and it should have hit it here. But I mean, you're not doing that the whole game. So I mean, like I guess my annoyance is you're doing it in the last 10 seconds of the game when the game is on the line, but like the rest of the game doesn't matter. Like the human error is acceptable. Like you said, like you watch a game, by the time you see somebody touch the ball, flip the switch, I'm like, you're automatically losing a 10th or 2 right there, just out of human reaction time. So it's, I don't know. The whole thing is whatever. I mean, like you said, it didn't matter because Miami, ended up winning the series. But I mean, Boston won that game and they go and win game 7. I mean, it's kind of, it's definitely a gripe you could have had if you were a Miami fan.
Interesting thought. That game 7 was incredible, though. Let's talk about game 7. The first play of the game turns out to be one of the most important plays of the game. Jason Tatum rolls his ankle on play 1, literally drive 1. My question I wanted to ask both you guys, and we'll get more into the game in a second. Do you think the Boston Celtics win that game if Jason Tatum does not roll his ankle?
I'm going to give you a resounding no, and I'll tell you why. So I think, we have seen, and I don't want to get on him, but we have seen Jason Tatum put up great performances in a game 7. We saw it earlier this playoffs where he dropped 51 against the Sixers. Now, with that said, though, this Boston Celtics team in this series specifically has not played well at all when the pressure has been on them. They go out game 1, they lose. I say the pressure is on them because they're expected to win all these games. Yeah. They go out game 1 in TD Garden, they lose. They go out game 2 where it's like, all right, well, Miami already stole game 1. There's no way they're winning game 2. They go out there and they lose. And then they go to Miami again. Miami has only been favored 1 game in this entire series. And it wasn't game 1, 2, or 3. And what does Boston do? They go out there and they lose again. Now, I give them credit because they definitely could have just rolled over and got swept, and that just could have been that. But whenever the pressure has been on Boston, after you win these 3 games, it's like, all right, well, we're going back to TD Garden. Boston, you're expected to win. There's a reason why you went into the game as 8.5-point favorites. Nobody thought the Heat were going to come out and win. Like, I get it, the Vegas side of things. There was, I think, at one point, 81% of the money was on Miami money line. But in reality, no one was expecting the Miami Heat to go to Boston and win the way that they did. So I think all the pressure was on Boston there. And we know when all the pressure's on Boston, they get tight. So I wouldn't have expected them to win that game. And, even if Tatum had one of those glorious performances, their second best player, Jaylen Brown, shot 8 for 23 from the field. You're just not going to beat a good Miami Heat team. 3. You're just not going to beat a good team that's playing hard that kind of way. So even with the Tatum injury, I don't think they would have won even if he was healthy.
You want to hear a funny opinion that I have that has real merit to it? If Boston wins that series, I don't think Tatum, Brown, or Smart win series MVP. I would have gave it to Derek White. Derek White coming off was absolutely stellar. Scored over 20 points in 3 games in the series. Had the tip-in winner in game 6. I'd have gave it to Derek White. Came in for Malcolm Brogdon, essentially, with Malcolm Brogdon getting hurt, taking a lot of those minutes. And Derek White was incredible in that series.
I hear you. I just think they would have gave it to Tatum because while Tatum wasn't great in the games that they lost, in the games they won, he did have decent stat lines.
I didn't say that they would. I'm saying I would.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Shally, does Boston win the game if Jason Tatum does not roll his ankle?
No, and I mean, this came up today at work. We were talking about it. I mean, I don't think it was that bad either. I don't think he had a good game shooting. Like you guys have already touched on the other big point. Jaylen Brown had an off night as well. If your best two players don't have good nights, you're probably not winning a Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's kind of that simple. He showed other flashes in the game. There was that one steal where he came out of the scrum with the ball at his foul line. He went full stride, full sprint down the floor with the ball, dunked it. Like I don't think it played a factor in the game that much at all. I really don't. There was times where he looked completely fine, and if you didn't know he rolled his ankle, you never would have known. He just had an off shooting night, and like you said, you couple that with Jaylen Brown having a terrible night from outside, and there you have it. You have a 19-point loss on your home floor in a Game 7 to Miami.
I want to talk about Caleb Martin. I want to talk about the Miami Heat, and then we'll do our finals preview. Miami Heat are one of the best coach teams I've ever seen in my entire life. You want to talk about a guy undrafted, which he should have been drafted. I'm telling you right now, I could see that talent at Nevada, but whatever. Last year in Game 7, he was a DNP. Did not participate. Coach's decision. Comes back this year. Tyler Hero is hurt. Kyle Lowry's a shell of himself, but he's giving you everything he's got. Gabe Vincent hurt in and out of the series, missed a game. The man that stepped up for Miami and the most valuable player of the series to me was Caleb Martin. Now, I think that Jimmy Butler was the leader, and I think Eric Spoelstra is a great coach, but the guy that stepped up and gave you what you needed was Caleb Martin. My guy went off, and he was on fire. And even at the end of Game 6, like, we don't talk about the end of Game 6, how Boston literally tried to choke away that game. I mean, that was 100% a choke job. They were up 9 points with 3 minutes and 23 seconds left, and they had to hit a tip-in game winner to win the game. Jimmy Butler went nuts down the stretch, as well as Caleb Martin did. It felt like, and Control, you said it perfectly earlier, it felt like when the moments got tight versus Miami, here's how I compare it. You ever see a 5-on-5 with 5 really good street ballers versus the AAU team that comes up and plays at like LA Fitness? And they're normally kicking everyone's butt. But when it gets close and you hear those street ballers talking smack, the physicality that they bring to you, the AAU kids normally fall down a peg. They just don't have it, right? They don't have that extra in them to win those games versus, how do I say it, a group of dirt balls. And I don't mean that in like a physical term, but like guys that are gritty, dirty, that can get in between the paint, loose balls, all over the place defensively. Miami comes off as that scrappy team that will find a way to win. I loved what the Miami Heat did this year, and I do not want to sit here and talk badly about them at all, but I'm about to. The Denver Nuggets are the best team in basketball.
Well, before you get in there, I want to just add a little bit more on to you calling Miami dirt balls. I know exactly what you meant by that. They play exactly how their identity is. They're made up of a bunch of players who get a lot of playing time now that went undrafted. So they're hungry. They're doing whatever it takes to not only make the roster, but get playing time. So they play exactly like that bunch. And even a guy like Jimmy Butler, who's their star, he wasn't this highly touted prospect coming out into the draft. Like, he wasn't a first round pick. So he has that edge to him as well coming out of Marquette. So I 100% understand what you're trying to say, because their only true guys that you could say would be Bam and Tyler Hero, and Tyler Hero's not playing. So I 100% understood what you meant by that. And on the flip side, Boston kind of played like a team that essentially had everything handed to them. Boston had been the best team, one of the best teams in the East pretty much all season. They coasted on by, and they thought they could just get by alone on being more talented than everybody that they went up against. And you saw every series up until this Heat series that just wasn't going to be the case. Like, the Hawks won 2 games they had no business winning. The Sixers series went 7 games, and in reality, the Sixers really should have won that series had they not had their own blunders. And then this Miami Heat team, you played around. They won the first 3 games, and you thought you'd just be able to, off of sure talent alone just went rattle off 4 straight, and that just wasn't the case. So
Charles Barkley was hilarious. He at halftime in that game, he said that they are literally, he was angry. We're gonna chuck up threes, and if they go in, we'll win, and if not, we'll lose. And they listen. Before we get into the finals, you're right, because I kind of wanted to ask this question. I had it written down. I was gonna save it to the Nick Nurse section, but did this series get Joe Mazzulla fired, or should he be fired because of this series?
I think he saved himself.
Really?
I think after game 3, I was, we came. I mean, even when it was 3-1, still, I was still all aboard the fire Joe Mazzulla train. But I think it does say a little something that his team was able to rally and win 3 games, and losing a game 7 on your home court is never easy. But in retrospect, I mean, he is a first year head coach, and I know they had been to the Eastern Conference Finals before, but I don't even want to say it was him that did it, that lit that fire under them, but them to win 3 straight and have a chance at history, I think that ultimately saved his job. Now, it'd be different if this was like his 4th or 5th year and he still couldn't get over the hump, but it being his first year and all that happened, I think that kind of saves him this time around.
Shall we?
I agree. I mean, I think it gave him a lot of things to go in a meeting and argue. That I had the locker room. They fought for me. They fought for us, and they came back from 3-0. We ran out of gas in game 7. Our best player got hurt the first play of the game. Yada yada yada. And and at the same time, he is a rookie head coach, and he got the job. Under very extenuating circumstances as well. So. I think they're going to try to, to some degree, if you're Boston, I think you also have to look at, we do need to get some kind of stability here, and what's going on up there the last 2 years. I think he keeps his job. I think the bigger question is how bad it, and how much it sounds and looks like Jaylen Brown doesn't want to be there anymore.
Well, I think that's your signing. If you say Missoula's coming back, I think you're signing Jaylen Brown's ticket out of town.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree. I don't know if they exactly go hand in hand, but I mean, I would say if you bring him back, it's probably something that definitely goes in the negative column for Jaylen Brown about resigning. So,
correct.
100%.
I don't think it's the end all be all, but I think it's definitely the nail in the coffin. Like he's sitting in there, and I think that's like the end all be all for it.
I 100% agree with that, but I will say I do think if there's a situation with Boston, if Jaylen Brown goes to their front office, if he goes to Brad Stevens and has that conversation, hey, it's either Jaylen or it's Joe. I think Brad Stevens is saying, hey Joe, we're gonna have to find our next guy because we can't just let Jaylen Brown walk out the door.
He's eligible for that super max, man. Huge contract there territory.
Bro, I mean, that's the thing, man. We were looking at it today, and the numbers at the back end of that contract are just silly, man. Like
$5 years, $295,
yeah. The last year, like the last 2 years, like last year was like 55, the last year 62. Like you're talking about guys making 750, 800 grand a game, man. Like that's batty. I don't know. I don't know if he's worth that. I really don't.
I gotta give the NBA Players Association all the credit in the world.
They literally their ass off.
They did, and they negotiated the per player per profit. So essentially, because the NBA has such few amounts of rostered players, they essentially are getting a bigger piece of the pie than MLB, NFL, NHL, because there's only 12 players on a roster.
Yep.
The next CBA is going to be very interesting because the players, and like you said, to their credit, they did a great job. They pretty much got everything they wanted, though. I'll be curious to see what's going to happen in 3 years when it's up again, because I do feel like the owners are gonna come back on certain things.
Not to get too far into that, because I don't want to go too far off base here, but I mean, the way Adam Silver is, though, he's a players commissioner. I mean, by all purposes of the word. So I think that I don't really think that the CBA will be too much different if he's still the head guy. And I get it, the owners will have a big say in that, but at this point now, like, players aren't going to just be like, hey, we were able to get $300 million, 3 years ago. Now we're not going we're going to negotiate something that's going to be a little bit different than that.
He's a very player-centric commissioner. Don't forget who
writes his check. I get it.
Writes his check. He works for the owner. So I don't think there's anything drastic. I don't think they're going to be like, hey, we're not paying these guys anymore. But again, I think you're going to see certain things. It's already been talked about. You've already seen rumors about like the load management. Like if you don't play a certain amount, you're not eligible for certain bonuses, awards, like all that good stuff. I think
the All-Star Weekend is the biggest change.
It's a joke. It's a joke. Agreed. I think you are going to see a lot of that stuff ratified. Like if you want to make $800,000 every night you step on the court, you're going to step on the court a lot.
Yeah, and I mean I 100% agree with that aspect of it. I mean, you'll see with this upcoming couple seasons, with them switching the games requirement, things like that. I do think, certain guys won't be eligible for all NBA anymore, which in turn will not make them eligible for those Supermax contracts. So Correct. That part of it, I'm 100% with you on. But for Jaylen Brown specifically, I wouldn't say that I agree. I don't think he's worth $295 million. But in turn, I don't think the Boston Celtics are in a position where they can just let him go for nothing. They are one game. They're one game away from the NBA Finals. Last year, they were there. They've been there 4 times with Jaylen Brown. So I think you're almost in a position where you either have to pay him or you have to trade him. You have to do a sign and trade where he still gets his money and you just salvage what you can. So I
think they end up signing and trading him. I really believe that. I think they end up trading him for a 2 guard. I think Bradley Beal's the guy.
I'm on board with you. I think they ultimately end up trading him. I really think that they send him somewhere like Portland and they get Anthony Simmons and the number 3 overall pick, and they get either Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, whoever's on the board there, and they just go from there.
Yeah. Well, number 3, you're basically whoever falls out of those 2, because Wemby's going 1.
Yeah. Yep.
So if it's Scoot or Brandon, they're the top 3 players in the draft. There's a 1A, there's 2 1Bs, and then there's a 3. Like I'm just being honest, right? Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying the other guys aren't good, but those are the top 3 players in the country.
Yep.
Coming out.
Agreed.
All right, so we got to talk about the NBA Finals. By the way, I think for whatever reason, Brad Stevens gets rid of Joe Mazzulla. I believe that happens. I think that Boston knows how poorly coached they looked. I think Charles Barkley let it very known on the broadcast. I think that they're the most talented team in the NBA and they still haven't won a championship. So there's only so much you can do to put that roster together. So I think Joe Mazzulla takes a walk. Just my opinion, though.
Any chance, any possible chance, and this is about to sound crazy, but if Doc Rivers doesn't land a head coaching job, any chance that they bring him in as like a senior advisor? He wouldn't be an assistant coach, but like senior advisor. Hey, teach Joe the ropes, kind of thing. Could you see that?
I could see that.
I could. I think it's a tough spot for Joe though, because then it becomes like that's a constant look over your shoulder. It's almost like, hey, we have your replacement in the building. We gave him this BS job title, and if you
remember when Pat Riley did that in the middle of the
Big 3,
yeah. And if you go on a 5-game losing streak, it's just we'll just fire you and give Doc the interim tag. And
little trivia question: do you remember who the coach was that he did it?
That dude from Turkey.
No,
that was
about David Blatt for Cleveland.
That was Cleveland. Yeah.
Do you remember the coach that he took over for? They fired midseason and took over for. He's a very well-known coach. He's still around the NBA very much.
Is that Gundy?
That's Stan Van Gundy. That is correct. I remember that, but
total off topic. Like, what the hell happened to our trivia show that we were going to win?
We'll talk about that off topic. Mazzulla, I think, gets an extension. He coached so well in the Eastern Conference Finals. He reminds me of a young Bob.
Dirty dancing. I don't want to hear it, dude.
Don't think Doc would consider something like that.
If his options are staying at home or doing something like that,
paycheck, Doc will do it.
All right,
how would you not? It's like a BS position. You got to show up and watch practice every day, probably, and you're gonna get paid. You're gonna get paid probably like $1.5 million. Why wouldn't you do it?
I agree. I don't think Doc or Joe fixes their crunch time issues, though.
Oh, I don't either, but I'm just saying I just
No.
automatically think that if Joe stays, I think you have to have a vet there to kind of teach him the ropes, because the way he handles himself in the media, the way he talks in general, like it just doesn't seem like he's a head coach, and he's not ready to be a head coach. But I think if Boston wants to stay with him, they have to bring in a guy that's like, hey, this is what you need to do. This is how you have to act.
I mean, listen, to some point that you do have to give him a little bit of credit and a little bit of benefit of the doubt the way he got the job. Like, he wasn't supposed to be a head coach this year.
Correct.
You know, like to both your points, like he was supposed to be an assistant learning how to become a head coach. That's why he doesn't sound like a head coach. Like,
yeah.
And also, I mean, I say this all the time. I mean, coaches take the fall for all this stuff all the time. At some point,
well, you could tell it was an organizational issue.
I get it. But he was the different part this year. But they didn't get it done under Brad Stevens. They didn't get it done under what's his face.
Doku.
At what point do you look at the players and just say these just aren't the guys? It's a fair question.
Get it done on Emi Doku, but I will tell you this: that Boston Celtics team was toe for toe with the Golden State Warriors last year.
I agree.
All right, so let's get into our NBA Finals preview. We talked a lot of really good things about the Miami Heat. I am now going to tell you that if you could find a place that will parlay Nuggets minus 1.5 on the series line and Nikola Jokic series MVP, you can get plus money. And I'm telling you right now, it's a lock. Lock it in, because I think that the Nuggets wrap the series up in 6 or less. I think it'll go 5. And I think that Jokic, there's a very small chance he doesn't win Finals MVP. Jamal Murray would have to go bazooka to win Finals MVP.
For him to be plus 1,200, though, like him showing numerous times this postseason already that he can go bazooka is crazy. Like you've Jokic, I think you said it was like plus 250, something like that.
He's minus 380.
Minus 380.
Yeah.
I think Jimmy's plus 330. And then the next person on the list is Jamal Murray at plus 1,200. And I think we're all agreeing at Denver. I mean, me and Gene are on the same boat. I'm assuming Cottrell's picking him too. That Denver is probably going to win the finals, so it ain't coming from anybody in Miami. So,
well, you can sprinkle $50 on Jamal Murray, but I'm telling you right now, it's a lottery ticket. It's a 12-1 lottery ticket. I think it's probably somewhere around 8-1 or 9-1 in reality, and you're getting better value at 12-1. But if we're being honest with ourselves, Jamal Murray would have to average 34 points a game in the finals for him to win, because Jokic puts up the stats. The whole offense is ran around him.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I just saw that number and I was like, just for the simple fact, like if Denver wins and Jokic doesn't win it, it's going to be Murray. Like, and I just 12 plus 1,200 is just wild. But yeah, I mean, I was going to say, you said 34. I was going to say he'd have to go 30 plus every game probably, and it still might not be enough if Jokic is ripping off triple doubles. So
let's break down the matchup, though. Let's go position for position. Let's go player for player. Let's break down what you're looking at in this series. So the first thing I want to break down is, I call this the main event, right? I call this matchup the main event, because there's no way in any world that I see the Denver Nuggets matching up with Jimmy Butler with anyone other than Aaron Gordon. He has shown you that he can stick tall, strong wings, and he has shown you time and time again that he makes it difficult for those guys to get to the lane. How do you stop Jimmy Butler? You make him into a three-point shooter. You make him into a jump shooter. Is he going to shoot you into a win one of these games? I'm sure he will. But Aaron Gordon is physical, athletic enough to stay in front of Jimmy Butler and protect the rim. That is matchup 1. That is matchup 1A. Your thoughts, Cottrell?
I mean, I 100% agree with that. I mean, that's going to be the big matchup, because if Jimmy is able to have success, and Jimmy will have success, but it just depends on how much success he has. If Jimmy's able to, average, I'd say if Jimmy averages 25 or more per game and he's shooting above 50%, this is going to be a hell of a series, because that means Jimmy is getting to his spots. And even when he's not making the shot, he's most likely finding somebody because Denver's collapsing on him. And the role players are going to have to obviously step up as well. But I see that being the number that Jimmy has to hit for this to even be somewhat competitive. Now, I know we're about to break it down position by position, but with that said, I mean, I think on the flip side for Miami, the big thing is going to be them finding their matchups, but I'm sure we'll get to that. We'll get to that here soon.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that Miami finding their matchups has all to do with guard play. I think they need a Gabe Vincent or a Max Strus to absolutely go off in this series. And listen, we'll say what you want, and we'll talk about it because it looks like he's going to return for game 2, maybe game 3, but Tyler Hero will be available in this series. He has returned from injury and he can play. I don't know how much you'd like to. You definitely don't play him game 1, right? You don't disrupt what you've been doing throughout the playoffs. If you win either game in Denver, you don't play him until game 3. So Max Strus and Gabe Vincent versus the matchup up front of Jamal Murray and KCP, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. How do you like that matchup? How does that play out for Miami? What are your thoughts there?
If you're Denver, I think you love it. We've talked about Jamal Murray for the last 2 weeks, looking like he's back to bubble Jamal Murray before the injury. He keeps playing at the level that he's playing at. I think it's a huge problem for Miami. You can't, kind of like Cottrell said, if Jimmy's averaging 25 a night, that probably means Miami, he's still getting his points and Miami's probably in the game. If Joker's still doing his thing, but Jamal Murray's still going off and adding 25 to 30 every night, that means Miami's probably in a lot of trouble. And then you factor in KCP, who's played really well in the playoffs. He chips in 10 to 15. He's a little bit better defensively than Murray is. I think if you're at Denver, I think you love the guard matchups.
I actually think they even have the matchup off the bench with Bruce Brown. I really love what he's brought to the table. And I think Bruce Brown would be a perfect player to shadow Tyler Hero throughout the series if Tyler Hero comes back. But we'll continue on the matchups. Then you look at Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. will probably be lined up with Caleb Martin. And I think that this isn't a matchup that Miami can exploit because Caleb Martin is way quicker on the feet and he can get around him. And Michael Porter Jr. does not – for Michael Porter Jr. to be as big as he is, he don't like playing in the lane at all. He is a gunner. Give him the ball and he shoots. I was shocked he had 6 assists in that one game versus the Lakers. Michael Porter Jr. versus Caleb Martin.
I will say, I think in that matchup, Michael Porter Jr., he did show me in the Lakers series that normally I was on board with Eugene. He does hate the paint at all costs. He actually was doing his part on the board side, and he was getting rebounds in that series. So I was definitely surprised to see that. If I'm Denver, though, I don't think I put Michael Porter Jr. on Caleb Martin. I think Caleb Martin's going to have Caleb Martin's quick first step. I don't think would be smart to have Michael Porter on. So I think you can kind of, in a sense, hide Michael Porter on Max Strus, and I put KCP on Caleb Martin.
Max Strus will shoot the hell out of. He's too quick for him, in my opinion. You're probably right.
Quickness, yes, but Max Strus isn't going to drive on you every time. Like Max Strus, for the most part,
it's easier for Porter to guard,
catch and shoot. Like if I'm Denver, I throw KCP on Caleb Martin because KCP can move his feet, and KCP is actually a pretty good defender. So if I can find a way to neutralize their second best option with our, second or maybe even first, depending on how you look at him and Aaron Gordon defender, then I'd say that'd be a win there, and I wouldn't rely on Michael Porter Jr. doing something.
Michael Malone, look at you, Michael Malone, breaking it down. I agree, that makes sense. If Max Strus hits you for 25 in one game, he hits you for 25. Make the adjustment. I like that. You're a little smarter than me there. I was just mad, like playing it out in my head. I'm like, Michael Porter Jr. is too big and like too slow on the feet to keep up with Max Strus, but that makes sense.
Yeah, if Max Strus is beating you off the dribble and like you said, he goes for 25, then in my mind, hey, so be it. But if it comes down to it, I can make that adjustment and, be good to go still.
I think there's going to be a lot of small ball. I don't think you'll see Michael Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon on the court at the same time outside the first 6 minutes and the last 4 minutes. I think you'll see Bruce Brown a lot in this series. I think you'll essentially sub him in for Michael Porter Jr. and you'll have and then Aaron Gordon. Essentially, he'll take minutes from them and you'll move both of them to the 4. I think the biggest issue there is who sticks Jimmy Butler in that scenario. But I think that's what you'll see a lot of in this series. Now we got to go to matchup 1B. I don't know if it's a worse matchup for Joker or a worse matchup for Bam, but the way it sets up is Bam is way quicker. Like if he's hitting his 15-footers, his 12-footers, he'll get them all day. Bam will have every opportunity to knock down 10-footers versus Denver. But in the paint, I think that Jokic is going to draw the double team every single time and find the open shooter every single time because Bam is not strong enough or physical enough to slow that big body down in the lane. So in that matchup, obviously I'm going with Jokic, but I can see where Bam can keep that matchup close if he's knocking down his jump shots.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a glimmer of hope there, I guess you could say, kind of like the way you described it, that, Bam, maybe doesn't like, wash out or even out with Joker, but doesn't get obliterated by like, plus minus at the end where he's like minus 40. I do agree with you. I mean, I think if they can run stuff for Bam outside the perimeter, elbow, stuff like that, he'll get his shot off. If he can make his shots, I mean, he has the potential to do a lot of damage. Offensively, though, for Joker, I agree with you 1,000,000%. He's going to back him down. If they don't double team him, Joker's going to score at will. If they do, he's going to kick it out. And then if Denver's hitting their threes, throw Miami gets in a lot of trouble. It's going to be a lot of cat and mouse. It's going to be a lot of cat and mouse all series long with a couple different matchups. And it's where do you want to exploit and try to exploit your advantage the most, and what are you willing to give up and take little shots here and there on the other end and lose. So I think it's going to be fun. I mean, I think it's going to be a fun series. It's if we've seen anything, Eric Spoelstra, to his credit, man, he's going to have a game plan. Is it going to show up in game one and work, and are all his matchups going to be correct? Maybe not. If not, he'll adjust. But I think it's going to be fun to watch. I really do. I think it's going to be a way more entertaining series than people are leading on.
I think the one thing too with that matchup between Bam and Nikola, we saw it kind of last series. Bam has a similar build to Anthony Davis and in what they want to do, athletic bigs. Obviously, Anthony Davis is a little bit taller than Bam, but they kind of will want to do the same thing. Bam likes to get to his mid-range, and if he can get you off the dribble one step and get into his move, that's where he's most comfortable. The thing with Bam, though, is that he's never been a guy to, even on his best days, he really hasn't been a guy to go off for, 30 plus, 40 plus, things like that. So even if Bam has it going, the problem will be is if he doesn't stay hungry and stay just driven to score the basketball. So he may have an advantage against Joker on offense, but if he's only putting up, 13, 14 shots and he's hit 10 of them, then Miami's still going to be looking for some more buckets from other places. So I think he can have the advantage there, but he's definitely going to have to be aggressive on the offensive end. And then on the flip side, obviously we know what Joker's going to do against anybody guarding him. He's going to give Bam the blues down there, but I will say Miami had a lot of success this last series and just in the postseason in general when they've spot ran their zone defense. I think you're going to see a lot of that in this series because they will want to double Joker and make him make tough decisions. And Joker is going to make those decisions, but it's going to be big on the Nuggets being able to knock down perimeter jump shots. So I think this series can really go one of two ways.
I think that the Miami Heat are in trouble. I really do. I think that the Denver Nuggets are the deeper team. I think that they're more efficient offense. And the last thing I kind of want to bring up is this, right? Eric Spoelstra went against Mike Budenholzer and outcoached him, made him look silly. But Bud's is looking for a new job. Went up against Tom Thibodeau. I made him look silly. Beat up on the New York Knicks. Went against Joe Mazzulla and a much talented Boston Celtics team. Made him look silly. He will not make Michael Malone look silly. Michael Malone will match him adjustment for adjustment. These are two of the top 5 coaches in basketball. There's no doubt about it in my mind. It's great to see Michael Malone finally getting that credit, but he will not. That's where I think that the huge difference in the Miami-Boston series was the coaching. Eric Spoelstra is just absolutely abusing Joe Mazzulla. It won't happen to Michael Malone. So, like, every way I look at this series, I just don't see a way for Miami to win it. If you were handicapping the series, forget what the odds are. What would you handicap it at?
For me, I don't. I'm right there with you. I really don't see a way for Miami to win. I see a way for them to keep this series close, and that the only way they do that, I think, is if Denver isn't hitting their perimeter jump shots, like the role players at that. But if I were handicapping it, I'd have Denver probably like minus 600 to win the series. That's how confident I am in Denver winning this series.
Charlie?
I wouldn't go. I was actually surprised it was as high as it was, if I'm being honest. Before I looked at it, I thought they would be around minus 300.
They're at 360.
Yeah, I know, but you're closer to 4 than you are 3. I mean, minus 360, 375, almost 400 for finals is a lot. It's again. I think Denver's a better team. Over the next 7 games, are they going to prove that? I think so. But again, we just spent 20 minutes talking about how they're going to do this, how they're going to do that. But all 3 of us also talked about what Miami can do. There's avenues for Miami to win. If you played this series 3 times, I think Denver wins 2 out of the 3. But you never know. But it's Vegas is very confident that Denver's going to win.
I think I would have minus it 450. I really believe I would have minus 450 plus 320. That's kind of what I would have wrote for the series if I was making it up, but that's just me. Anything else on the NBA Finals before we get into the coaching carousel? Because we're not going to just talk about Nick Nurse, which I do want.
I do want to give my prediction on the series. I got Nuggets in 5 ultimately. I think the Nuggets win the first 3 games of the series, and I think Jimmy Butler goes down fighting in game 4. Ultimately, the Heat win, and then I think Denver goes back to Denver and take care of business. But I think Joker is going to win MVP. Don't see a way that doesn't happen. Even if Jamal Murray goes crazy, I think a worst case scenario for Joker is he averages like 20 points, 12, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists. And I think that gets you MVP pretty much every year. So I think Joker's a shoe-in for that.
Charlie?
I'm going to go Nuggets in 6. I think Jimmy finds a way to steal one somewhere. Make it a little interesting going back to Miami. But I also think Miami's just going to run out of steam here as well. I know they're going to. I think there's at least 2 days between every game, but a lot of back and forth. They played way more basketball than Denver has. I think it all factors in eventually. I'll give Jimmy all the credit in the world. Like I said, I think he finds a way to win 2 games, but I think Denver's just too much. I think too talented, too deep, have too many guys that can score. I like Denver in 6.
I have Denver in 5 in a different way than Cottrell does. I have Denver winning the first 2 games at home. I have them losing game 3, pulling out a really, really close game in game 4, like 104-101 type, down to the buzzer, and then absolutely annihilating them in game 5 at home, winning the championship in Denver. So I'll go Denver in 5. Let's get into, and I got Joker as my MVP. Let's get into the coaching hires so far. So the most puzzling one, I kind of want to start with that. The Phoenix Suns have hired assistant coach Kevin Young to take their vacated spot after they lost out in the Nick Nurse sweepstakes. Are you looking this up? Did you not hear this yet?
No, I didn't see that he got hired. I knew that they were looking at. Well, Nick Nurse was in between Philly and Phoenix, and he ultimately was like, "Yeah, I'd rather coach Joel than KD, or whatever he said." But I didn't see that they hired a guy.
I thought they hired him. I thought it was all but done, but now you're making me double check myself.
They may have. Like I said, I just didn't hear about it.
Let me just double check. I don't want to mess this up. All right, so I don't know. One day ago, Kevin Young or Doc Rivers, who would be a better fit? Suns narrow coaching search to Doc Rivers, Frank Vogel, and Kevin Young. The Suns expected to hire Kevin Young as head coach. Bleacher Report. So it's not done yet. Bill Simmons, Suns will pick Kevin Young as next head coach. Bleacher Report, Suns expected to hire Kevin Young as head coach. So it's not all, I guess it's not finished. I apologize. But that is puzzling to me. You fired Monty Williams to hire his assistant. I'm not saying Monty shouldn't have got fired. I'm not saying that, what happened there lands on him. When your team quits, you can't fire the whole team, so you have to fire the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you hire an assistant that was in that same locker room, that same building, with that same culture.
Agreed. You got to hit the reset button. You got to bring somebody in from the outside that is going to bring a whole new culture, a whole new voice to the room. And you got to have, CP3, Durant, Booker, Ayton. Everybody's got to start from zero and be on the same page. That's the only way you get that team to win. I agree. I think hiring a guy that's already been in that room and been around that culture and probably already seen all the BS behind the scenes and, carries that baggage onto the bench with them, I think that's a terrible idea. And I think it's crazy you're going to have an assistant that to not, probably going to be able to deal with some of the personalities on that roster. I mean, KD wants to walk all over that guy. He's going to. We've already seen DeAndre Ayton just be like, I'm just not going to play anymore. Like, CP3 is a professional. Booker can be a little whiny at times. That's a lot to manage, man. That's your top four. And that's, other than CP3, you go right down the line there. Like, you could bring up a point about all three of them.
I got news for you. Chris won't be there next year.
He might not be, but if he is, my point is, I mean, again, CP3 is not part of the problem, but I think it's a crazy hire. I think it's a crazy hire with who's out there.
I think.
Good.
I was going to say my biggest issue with it is it's not even that they're hiring somebody who was in that locker room and knows that culture. Because for me, Sam Cassell was in the Sixers locker room, and if he got hired and after they got rid of Doc Rivers, I would have been okay with that. I think the big thing for me is that, it's never came out. Like Kevin Young, only guy that's really been there for a while so far has been Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. It's not like Kevin Young has this rapport with players like Kevin Durant or all these other guys. Like, this roster is pretty much new right now. So it'd be different if he had won over that locker room and it was like, hey, we work with this guy in the offseason. We have a great rapport with him. We believe in him. We think he's a great leader for us. That'd be a completely different ball game. But for you to hire, a guy like Kevin Young, who was the assistant on this team, and there's clearly a veteran figure that's missing on this Suns team, somebody to hold these superstars accountable, is clearly what's missing here. And you go after Kevin Young. I'm 100% with you both. I don't think this makes any sense. Like, I think you would have had to hire a guy that has experience coaching superstars. Frank Vogel would have made a lot of sense. Maybe you don't believe in what he does, philosophy-wise on offense or defense. But Frank Vogel makes a lot of sense because he's coached these superstars before. Doc Rivers, the experience makes sense, but I wouldn't have put him in that locker room. I don't think he makes them any better. But Kevin Young is completely puzzling to me as well.
What's happening, everybody in the chat? Just want to check out. Thank you. NBA Cypher with Mo, Saigon, Kyle Edwards, Timmy Todd, Douglas Lewis Brooks, and everybody else popping in the chat. Appreciate you. Kevin the Troll. Just wanted to say what's up to y'all. But It's puzzling to me. I feel like that they were Nick Nurse or bust. I agree with Kyle. But now that Nick Nurse is hired by the 76ers, and we'll talk about that in a second, I feel like there's still a lot of really good head coaching candidates out there. And it's funny that we say this, but the first person I would call would be Sam Cassell, knowing that he didn't get the 76ers job. You've already picked from that Philadelphia coaching tree. There's a lot of guys that can go in there. Now, Ty Lue is still listed as the third favorite for head coach, and he still has a head coaching job in LA. But Ty Lue's another name I would look at. Try to get him to figure out what situation to get him. But this wouldn't be my hire. I just wanted to talk about that one first. Second one on the agenda. Milwaukee Bucks have came to terms with assistant coach Adrian Griffin to make him the team's next head coach. This is who Giannis wanted. Giannis was very vocal on who he wanted. Adrian Griffin is the hire. What do you guys think about Adrian Griffin?
See, in that spot for me, I think that makes a lot more sense. I don't think the Bucks have a culture issue. No. I think they've kind of gotten all the squeeze they could out of Mike Budenholzer being their head coach. I think that was the issue for them. And I think they both could have benefited from a change in scenery. Obviously the Bucks this year, the injury bug biting them at the worst possible time heading into the playoffs. But I really feel like I don't think Mike Budenholzer is a bad coach. I don't think he's a top 5 coach either, though. But if you have a guy already in the building that the players believe in and they're already 100% behind, that makes a lot more sense, to make that hire, especially if he's a guy who's been on staff when they've been there and they've won championship already. So that makes sense to me.
I agree with everything Charles just said. I don't think you had any kind of old culture issue. Like I said, I just think you needed a change of voice in the locker room. I don't think it was anything really more than that. Everybody praised everybody when they left. There was no, ill will or shade thrown around or anything like that. I think you just needed a new coach. And you started out with the most important part of it. That's what Giannis wanted. It was going to be really hard to not do that. So, guy that everybody's comfortable with, probably going to be a similar philosophy, probably change some things around. And, I don't think Milwaukee will skip a beat.
I completely agree with both of you guys. It's weird. Let's stop doing that. I completely agree. Next, I want to just get your thoughts on these real quick. There's 2 head coaching vacancies we haven't talked about yet. The Detroit Pistons. And the Toronto Raptors. I think that Toronto makes a really weird splash. I really believe that they're between 2 people, and those 2 people are Heat assistant Chris Quinn, who I think would be a very good coach, learned behind Eric Spoelstra. And that sounds crazy, but I believe that Becky Hammon is the other one that has that opportunity to win that Toronto job. I think that Becky Hammon could be the first female head coach in the NBA, and I feel like the Toronto Raptors would be the team that makes that move.
I think Becky's interesting coming off the year they came off of. I think, obviously you don't have coaching changes usually after a good year. So don't get me, I understand I'm saying what I'm saying. But at the same time, I think it's a weird time up there. I don't know if the time is right for her to get that job right now. I do agree with you. If anybody's going to do it, I think Toronto will be the top of that list. They are not afraid to go outside the box whatsoever, and they've shown that in the past. I do agree with you. I think Becky, even if it's not with Toronto, I think Becky will end up being the first female head coach in the NBA. I don't know if they pull the trigger on that. I really don't. I won't be shocked, but I would be a little bit surprised.
Okay.
I think with Becky specifically, I think she'd 100% be deserving to be the first woman head coach in the NBA. I just think the timing, like Bill said, I just don't think right now would be the right time. I mean, she did just get suspended in the WNBA for 2 games for conduct issues, whatever you want to call it. So I just that alone, I think, is going to have teams not ready to hire her this specific season. And it's not to say that whatever she did was bad enough to warrant her not to get hired right now, but one, obviously she's going to be the first woman to ever be in the NBA, and teams are already looking for any reason not to give her a shot. I mean, we saw what happened a few years ago when Portland had interviewed her, and all that mess came out afterwards. So I just think that this is the wrong year for her. Now, I think next year it can 100% be back on the table, but I don't think Toronto make that hire this year. I think it's going to be interesting though, because I don't know if any vet coaches will want to go to Toronto because they are basically in the rebuilding stage. So you have to go out and get a young guy, but you have to get somebody who you trust to build that team's core. So
just to give you the list of coaches that have either interviewed or have like shown interest in the job. Warriors assistant coach Kenny Atkinson.
Makes sense.
Bucks assistant coach Charles Lee. Kevin Young of the Suns. Kings assistant Jordy Fernandez. Grizzlies assistant Darko Raj. I can't say the last name. Heat assistant Chris Quinn. Becky Hammond. Adrian Griffin and Emi Adoku were already hired. Former NBA player and ESPN analyst JJ Redick reportedly interviewed for the job.
I did see that JJ Redick was in the mix.
And former NBA star and Nets head coach Steve Nash.
I mean, I think
Steve Nash would make I'm not going to say it'd make a lot of sense, but I could see that. You want to splash, you want the name, and he's Canadian. I could see it.
Yeah, I mean, Nash makes a little bit of sense. I don't think Kenny Atkinson goes there. I do like the kid from Miami.
Chris Quinn.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, again, just when we were talking about with Becky Hammond, I mean, they're in a weird spot. I mean, they're coming off, not a great year. You don't know how much of a rebuild it's really going to be, and I think it's delicate. And I think you see that with the interviews. I think if these coaches are going into interview and hearing, what Toronto's game plan is for free agency and so forth and so on, I think a couple of them might not be hearing what they want to hear, what they like. So I think that lends some credence to it as well. If they're going to blow it up, then maybe you do hire Becky, because then you have 2 years of no expectations whatsoever. Let her coach, let her get her feet wet, let her prove she can do it. And start building the team for her. But I mean, I think that factors into it as well.
Well, it's kind of why I kind of lean towards that. Like the Detroit coaching vacancy, I have a great feel for, and I feel like I know exactly who they're going to hire. I'll go third on this one, but I feel like I know who they're going to hire.
I mean, I'll go first. I mean, I read the thing today that they're all in on Monty, so offering them, the rumors are going to offer him crazy money to take the job. I mean, listen, you have a couple budding superstars there. If you can keep them on the court and you get a good coach there that knows what he's doing, they're going to have another decent draft pick this year. It's a team that, if structurally, everything off the court, if you can get it to where it needs to be, I think that team has a chance to be successful. They're going to have the talent. It's a matter of putting it all together, getting the front office in line, and it's a lot, but they're apparently all in on Monty Williams, so we'll see.
They are $10 million a year offering him. They want him.
They do.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of money, that makes sense for Monty to go there. If I'm Monty, though, I don't know how I'd feel about going to a rebuild, but you give me $10 million a year, I definitely could sleep better knowing that I'm in a rebuild.
5-year contract, $10 million a year, I would take it.
Yeah.
You start with Cade Cunningham. You have Jaden Ivey. You have the number 5 pick. So
no, I mean, and I'm with you.
Yeah.
You got James Wiseman, who's shown that he still has some talent. He might not have been worth the number 2 overall pick, but he has talent. But
he was just never going to fit in that system.
That would make a lot of sense going with Monty if you want that experience there. But I'm surprised that we haven't seen more interest in Chauncey Billups, who was getting looks at being a head coach before and knows what it takes to be a part of that Detroit culture.
If Monty turns him down, they're going to hire Kevin Ollie. They interviewed him once. They're going to interview him a second time. Kevin Ollie is the second option for this Detroit Pistons team. It'll be Monty and then Kevin Ollie. I'm telling you that right now.
Kevin Ollie would be an interesting name as well. I mean, we haven't seen him at the NBA ranks, but that could be an interesting name as well.
I think if Monty turns him down, they'll put a full court press on for Kevin Ollie. They won't put a full court press on. Kevin Ollie's wants the job. It's not like they have to put a press on. But I think they'll fall back to Kevin Ollie.
But yeah, I'm surprised Chauncey hasn't gotten more consideration there, especially considering where he was at in the Portland head coaching search a couple years ago, and obviously the ties to Detroit already, and Ben Wallace being up in that front office too. So I am surprised not to see that right now.
All right, let's talk about the man of the hour. This is going to be a little bit of a discussion. The Philadelphia 76ers have hired Nick Nurse, which I will pause and very happy about this hire for the Philadelphia 76ers. I think this signals that they will be moving away from James Harden. I think this signals that Daryl Morey is learning from his mistakes in the past of hiring Mike D'Antoni and trying to make it work with James Harden. I think this signals Nick Nurse said he took the job because he wants to coach Joel Embiid. Now, if you remember, Nick Nurse was the first coach to develop a strategy to really shut down Joel Embiid. Toronto has had Joel Embiid's number for years. And the fact that that coach is coming in the building to help Joel Embiid is lovely to me. I'm very happy with the hire. I think he's a great X's and O's coach. I think he's great at understanding what a team needs to win. That Toronto team that he took to the finals and the other ones that overperformed year in and year out with less talent, I'm very happy with the hire. I'm very, very happy with the hire of Nick Nurse. I don't think Shally is, judging by expressions, judging by his opinion, but I'm very happy with the hire of Nick Nurse.
I'm happy with parts of it. Other parts of it, I don't know. I think I love the fact, because I do. The first point that you made, I think, is 100% true. I think that closes the door on James Harden, which I'm ecstatic about. I think, I don't know. I'm a little bit more, I guess, skeptical. I guess you would say. I think he caught lightning in a bottle, and with that Toronto team, and you just look at some of the things that happened in that run. I mean, even the series against us, the ball that bounced 6 times before it went in. Like, I'm not gonna. I don't take anything away from anybody that wins a championship, because I don't believe in that stuff. But I think other coaches are more fortunate to win them than others. I definitely think there's better coaches than others that have won them. I think it's like anything else. I'm curious to see how he's going to mesh with Joel. I like the fact, like you said, that he wanted to come here to coach Joel. I need Joel to listen and mesh with that attitude, and I think it's yet to be seen if that's going to be the case. I think you look at how his guards play in some of his past teams. I'm very optimistic about that, because I think he's capable of taking Tyrese Maxey to another level as well. I don't think he's done growing yet by any means. I don't think we're at his ceiling. So I think it's kind of a mixed bag for me. Not overly, against it or disliking it, but I'm not, I would say, over the moon about it like you are.
Well, it's not over the moon, but I think that it's the right hire. Nick Nurse is known for 3 things: pace and space. So he taking the right shot and making quick decisions. The Sixers are very bad at. That's making the right decision. They're a terrible decision-making team, and that goes to Joel. Joel is just not a student of the game the way he should be. Just not. I mean, he started playing basketball second year in high school. Pace and space is huge for what the 76ers want to do. And I think that's great for them and for their core. I think Nick Nurse as a whole is the right hire, because I feel like he can develop Tyrese Maxey into a better player, and he can help Joel Embiid overcome his deficiencies. He'll make him a better passer. He'll make him a better decision maker. I think it'll be more about the team and less about ISO ball. Nick Nurse is about positionless basketball. That's what he tried creating in Toronto. He loves wings. So this 76ers team is going to get a bunch of athletic wings in here because that's what he likes to coach. You know, from Scotty Barnes to Pascal Siakam, he loves him some wings.
Do you think his point guard follows up here?
I don't think Van Fleet. I think that we have our Van Fleet. I think he goes here because you have Tyrese Maxey, which in my opinion is the new version of a better version of Fred Van Vliet.
I think Fred Van Fleet's more of a natural point guard than Maxey is, though. I feel like you've seen that today. I feel like you've seen that.
He wasn't 3 years ago when Nick got his hands on him.
My point is, I think you've seen the best way to use Maxey, and it's not him dribbling the ball around for 15 seconds. I don't think that goes to his strengths. I think he could play next to Van Fleet. They'd be incredibly small up front, but I don't know. I think it's just an interesting – I'd be curious to see what ends up happening with him.
No, I had said that last week too, that I thought that'd be an interesting pairing, Van Fleet and Maxey. But as far as this hire goes, I think it was a great hire for the Sixers. I think you got the second best coach that was available. My number one was Monty Williams. I thought he would have been just a slightly better fit than Nick Nurse. But with that said, I mean, I think you have to, still tip your cap to Daryl Morey and that Sixers front office for getting Nick Nurse in the building. Now, you guys said that you don't feel like that. Well, basically, you said this means that James Harden will be out the door. I don't necessarily 100% get behind that. Now, I think that is the case, but I do think that Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse did have a conversation. And regardless of how that conversation went, I do think that Nick Nurse's desire to coach Joel would have superseded anything else about any other players on that roster to bring him to Philadelphia. Now, with that said, I still don't think James Harden is coming back, but I still think there's a small window there just because I'm sure Morey and Nurse had that conversation. But the pace and space thing, Gene, that's 100. I can't agree with that any more than how you said it. Joel Embiid, you will see his turnovers, and especially during the regular season, you will see his turnovers go down because I think he's going to understand where players are supposed to be. I think now you get a lot of Joel Embiid getting turnovers for trying to do too much, but I think Nick Nurse is the kind of coach where he'll let him know, hey, if you're getting doubled and it's coming from this direction, hey, you're going to have, whoever on the wing on this corner or opposite corner will be open, things like that. Joel's going to know where things are coming. He's going to understand the game a lot more this upcoming year. So I do think that is going to be a great hire for him. The big thing, though, is just I think the big thing is Daryl Morey and Nick Nurse staying on the same page, and Daryl Morey bringing in those guys to really fill out this Sixers roster. But I love the hire.
I'll say this, right? And I think that there's one player the 76ers need to look out for in this free agency. And I think that, you're going to create a lot of space, right? Like you have $38 million at this point to bring somebody in. I think Jeremy Grant will be a name that you see linked with the 76ers very quickly. He's exactly the type of player Nick Nurse likes to coach, and he's an unrestricted free agent that probably will not be going back to Portland. So I think you should look at Jeremy Grant as your replacement for Tobias Harris. I think Tobias Harris will get moved this offseason. I'm almost sure of it. And I think that they add two athletic wings to that team and a point guard. And I think that that's what you'll end up seeing this offseason.
I do think Toby is very movable now that he has the expiring contract. Problem is I just don't know if it'll be this offseason because I feel like there's going to be some NBA teams that think that they're going to be in a better position than next year. And I think you don't ultimately see Toby moved until like January or February once teams realize where they're at and, them valuing that extra first-round pick for the following season. But I do see Toby getting moved as well. I just don't know if they'll prioritize a guy like Jeremy Grant, especially if James Harden is going to be leaving. I don't know if they're going to prioritize a guard, or maybe they even all systems go after Jaylen Brown. I don't know how that money would have to work or the sign and trades you have to do to make that happen. But Jeremy Grant's an interesting name.
Jeremy Grant, I think you could sign with just the money you're gonna have open with James leaving. Anything with Brown coming here would have to involve with Toby going back. I think Toby is an interesting / complicated issue right now. I think if in a perfect world they would move him in the offseason so they could go just sign 2 people, and be done with it. I agree with you, Cottrell. I don't think it's going to be as easy as necessarily a lot of people think. I think he starts the year with the Sixers. The problem becomes if they're playing well. I also think he's going to play better with James Harden not on the floor. I just do. It's just it wasn't a fit with Harden. I'm not blaming that solely on James. James holds the ball a lot and becomes, Toby became the 4th option on that team. I think he'll play better under Nick Nurse. Then it becomes a thing, if the Sixers are doing very well, do you go trade that piece in the middle of the season? I think that becomes the complicated part of it. So, I think it's going to be interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets traded in the offseason, but I think he starts the season on the roster.
So let me give you where my warped head goes, and if this works, you guys tell me if you think they're a better team yesterday or tomorrow with this. The Philadelphia 76ers have the cap rights to bring in 3 players and then whoever they can acquire in the Tobias Harris trade. Not 1, they can do a max or they can go 3. Jeremy Grant is the one I already told you. The second one on the list, I think, would be a rotational player in Kendrick Nunn as a backup point guard, a guy that's going to come in and give you defense, a defensive specialist. But the splash in this one, and I know that he's not the most popular guy in the world right now after what just happened in the Western Conference Finals, but it's D'Angelo Russell, unrestricted free agent point guard is a pass-first point guard. You put him in there, you get Kendrick Nunn as your defensive stopper, and you move to – I really believe that would be a direction the 76ers could go. I know you're not a D'Angelo Russell fan. I get it.
Dude, you said it on last week's show. He's mentally fragile, and he doesn't play well in big games. Why would you pay that guy money to come play on your team? He's not gonna live in Philly and all that's gonna go away. He is who he is. He is exactly who he's been since he's been in the league. He has not changed.
Yeah, you're right.
No,
I don't disagree with that, but
I was gonna say I think fit-wise that makes a ton of sense. I just don't know if you can bring that kind of mentality to the Sixers.
No,
they already have guys who are timid when things get tight, and then you add in D'Lo mixed with the culture and just the fans of Philadelphia, where that pressure is just going to be even more immense. I just don't know for playoff basketball if that helps you. I'm not a big fan of the Kendrick Nunn's fine, especially if you're just, throw him on the bench. He's comes in whenever. That's fine.
I just made it work with the $38 million I had.
Yeah.
I took a $20 million player, a $15 million player, and a $5 million player.
I get what you're saying for sure. I could see that, but if you could, I'll say this, would you prefer that? And again, I haven't looked at the exact money, but would you prefer that? Or would you prefer making a run at Van Fleet and getting a guy like Rui Hachimura?
I don't want Van Vliet at all. Going after Rui Hachimura is not something I'm opposed to. I think the Lakers do everything they can to get Rui and Austin Reeves back in LA. I think they're both restricted free agents. So I think they do whatever they can to get those 2 guys back in LA. I'm not opposed to making a run at Rui. I don't want Fred Van Vliet at all. He stunts Maxi's growth. That's what it is. You cannot play them on the court together. It's a bad mix. You can't do it. They're too small to play in the same backcourt together. And Tyrese Maxey is my priority. That's number 1. Number 2, they can shop Toby and try to find a point guard across the league. But I agree with you. I think Maxey makes way more sense as a combo guard that can bring the ball up, but isn't a dribble it out guy. But you then need a tall point guard that can play defense, that can shoot the basketball, unlike Ben Simmons.
Ben Simmons is probably available for cheap, though.
Stop it. Stop it.
Or
I want to answer.
I got one more interesting name to throw out at you.
Fire.
What happens if you thinking about bringing in a guy like Draymond Green?
I would love that. because you can run Maxey as your point guard if you
Yeah.
bring in Draymond Green, because Draymond Green would run the offense past the half court.
Problem with Draymond is Draymond and PJ Tucker can't be on the court at the same time.
That is absolutely correct. Draymond and PJ Tucker are the same player. You can't.
So PJ Tucker's got to go.
He'd have to go in that scenario, and I don't think you can move his $10 million a year.
No, that's the only roadblock for that. I would take Draymond. I would love for Draymond. I mean, you got the same thing out of PJ Tucker, but I mean, Draymond Green is another guy who's going to get in JoJo's face and tell him to toughen the hell up too. Like that, I would love Draymond Green on this
and
team.
then I think too, if you bring in a guy like Draymond, that kind of relieves the pressure off of a guy like Maxey, because Draymond's not going to run your point, but Draymond can still run your offense. So you at that point, you get a point guard to kind of just fill the spot.
Can't have Draymond. You'd have to move PJ Tucker and Tobias Harris, and that's very tough.
Oh, for sure, you'd have to move Tobias. Like, there's no doubt about it.
And you'd have to move PJ Tucker. You can't play them together.
That's true. I don't think it's going to be hard to move PJ Tucker, because yes, the money is a lot, but if you're a playoff team though, like what PJ Tucker brings you, like value wise, I think you could sell that. Like,
you realize he's 39.
Yeah,
I get it.
He's old, dude, and if you're that good of a playoff team and you have that much of a roster, you probably don't have $10 million in cap, and you can't trade PJ Tucker and pay some of his salary either. That defeats the whole purpose of getting rid of him.
What I'm saying is, for example, because I have a team that needed a guy like PJ Tucker. If I'm the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Sixers are shopping PJ Tucker, and all we have to do is pay his $10 million, okay, who do you want in return? We need that kind of presence in our locker room to make us better.
Point. But that's a lot of moving pieces. I want to try to stay as realistic as humanly possible.
I get it.
I don't think Draymond Green is realistic to the 76ers as much as I love him. But, all right. So, last part, let's close it up. All the coaching hires. We'll talk about NBA free agency when it happens. We're going to talk about the NBA finals next week to see where we're at come next Wednesday. Any final thoughts on the NBA before we move into the NHL Stanley Cup?
I'm ready for
I got nothing. I just don't know if. Let's see. Is it possible that the series is over before we get back? Okay.
I think that most they
Game
can play
tomorrow. They can only play 3 games.
Yeah, and Game 3 I think is Wednesday, so we're gonna be on air before they even play Game 3.
So I think it's Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. It's 100% right.
Okay. So, we'll talk about it when the Heat are down 2-0. Or if they're tied 1-1. There's no chance the Heat are up 2-0.
That's a fact.
0.0.
Did you see FanDuel was offering odds you can bet on like the exact way the games play out?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Never saw that before.
Okay, so let's move on to the NHL Stanley Cup Finals. I think I was the closest to nailing the Stanley Cup winner, as I had a team that lost in 6 games in the Western Conference Finals. But we've all been wrong at this point. The Dallas Stars laid an absolute egg versus the Vegas Golden Knights at home, Game 6. I thought we were going to have the opportunity to see 2 games, 3 overs, 3-0 comebacks, because Dallas got them at home. They were favored in the game. They were down 3-0. And by the way, that was like the closest 3-0 series I've ever watched in my entire life. Like 2 and 3 games were overtime games. All 3 were 1-goal games.
Yep.
Then Dallas comes back, wins an overtime game. Then Dallas comes back, wins a 1-goal game. And then Game 6 is, what was it, 5-0 at the end of the second period?
I turned it on
6-0.
I turned it on 8 minutes into the game, and they were down 3-0.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, just don't have to watch this anymore.
I feel like the part that was interesting about that series is obviously Vegas has been on their tear throughout the playoffs, but in this series specifically, like you said, Gene, it was tight, and
right,
even
on the East,
the Florida Carolina series was wild. First 2 games,
it was.
Went to overtime.
You going crazy overtime in both of these matchups. Ultimately, that one ended in a sweep, but this one could have as well, and it wouldn't have told the full story about how the series were going.
Correct. I agree 100%. The goal differential after 5 games was -1 for Dallas, which to me is great. That's what you want in playoff hockey. The goal differential for the series was -6. That's wild. Or -7. Was it 6-0 final?
Yeah, 6-0.
That Dallas laid an egg, Game 6. Dallas looked like Wayne Curtis looked last night playing me and Matt.
Ouch.
Little shot fired. But 66-17. I'll stop. But look, the Florida Panthers and the Miami Heat, 2 8 seeds in the finals from the same area is absolute. Could you imagine being a fan of both? Because it's very possible to be a fan of both.
Yeah, it's definitely crazy. I think the crazier part is that I feel like no one coming into the playoffs was really expecting Florida to go on this run.
You think? They were going against the team that had the greatest regular season in the history of hockey.
Not even just that though. But even after they beat the Bruins, though, I wouldn't have been thinking like, oh well, the best team in the East is already gone, so Florida should make it to the Stanley Cup final.
They barely got in.
That's more so what I meant.
They didn't get into they clinched after playing their 81st game to get in. They made it in by the skin of their teeth. Like Gene said, and then they go and knock out. And I quite honestly just pretty much just boat raced the best regular season team in the history of the sport. Who did they play in the second round? I can't remember who they played in the second round. And then they played Carolina.
Toronto, I think it was.
Maybe it was Toronto. And then they played Carolina, who was on absolute fire and not letting anybody score. They win the first 2 games in overtime, and then that just turned into a sweep, which was probably almost as shocking as them beating Buffalo. Matthew Tkachuk is just out of his mind right now. Bob, yeah, I mean it's crazy. You know, I don't want to say to put Flyers fans too pissed off, but I mean both of Florida's goalies are ex-Flyer goalies. Go figure. But Matthew Tkachuk is he's got that thing now. Wherever he goes, the puck just finds a stick and he scores. Yeah. Just crazy. And players go on runs like that in the NHL. And Bob looks like he did. Bob's looking like Columbus Bob all of a sudden. When they won the Cup that year, and he won the Vezina, and he looks good, man. I mean, Florida
4 overtime game was absurd. Dude.
Absurd.
Bob had 65 saves.
Overtime hockey is nuts, man. I watched 90% of that game. I didn't watch any of the fourth overtime. I passed out. But I wasn't a fan of either one of those teams. And it's so easy for a puck just to hit like 3 things and then squirt through your goalie and go in. Like I was on the edge of my seat watching that game, like every shot. Like, and again, I don't even like either team. NHL hockey, playoff hockey is just different. It's special, and that's why it does so well.
I will say too that overtime, that game specifically, I was just up and I wasn't watching the game, but like I kept getting the ESPN notifications like, all right, this game just went to triple overtime. I'm like, oh shit, it's 1 a.m. Let me nothing else on. Let me go tune into this game. Let's see what's going down here.
Man, I love playoff hockey. I've said it numerous times on the show. Like, I can go softball, play late game, and then come home and watch the 10:30 playoff game. It'd be 2 teams that most of the time I hate, but I can just watch playoff hockey. It's just so much. It's one of those. Man,
that's why I was so bitter. The Flyers have been terrible.
I don't want to talk about the Flyers.
I know. That's why I'm so bitter about that.
Yeah, I will say. I mean, the thing that makes obviously playoff hockey is in itself is unique, but I love the fact that it is quite literally we are going to keep playing and playing. We're not alternating. We're not changing anything. We're not changing the style of the overtime period. We're going to just keep giving you 10 minutes until somebody scores. And so
20. It's 20. They don't cut down the period. It's 20.
Yeah. So you're giving me the full extra period, and you have to score to win. In no other sport it's really like that. I mean, football you can kind of say it, but they switch the rules where another team can get a chance to score again. But legit sudden death makes it crazy.
I would say baseball keeps their normal rules and over, for extra innings.
Yeah, but if the away team scores, yeah.
Can I ask you a question though?
Wait,
Johnny, you're a lot more well versed on this than I am. But like I watched sparingly. I watched some Carolina Panthers Hurricanes highlights, right? Was it me or did it feel like the Hurricanes were the better team? Like I felt like they skated better. If I'm not mistaken, they had more shots on goal. The puck felt like it flowed better. It just felt like Florida kept getting the goal they needed.
I would say
wrong to say that.
No, like, I mean Carolina was, I think, third in points, second or third in points. Behind Boston. They had a great season. Any other normal season besides the season Boston had, they're probably the 1 seed. They had a great season. They had a great roster. I don't want to say their goaltending went back a little bit. They didn't play as they went back and forth between both goalies, which I always think is like the kiss of death in an NHL series. But they definitely were. I mean, you look at them on paper, they're not even close. I mean,
I just looked up the shots on goal through the series just for the heck of it. 68-44 in the 4 overtime game. 38-26. 35-16. They outshot Florida the whole series.
Bob, baby. You see, I mean, we've all been around, some of us longer than others, but I mean, how many times? That's why it's never, I think the 8 seed is won the Stanley Cup more times than any other sport, because if you get a hot goalie, like he will, it is minus, in my opinion, minus the quarterback in football. It's the most important position of any other sport in the playoffs. They will absolutely win you games single-handedly. I mean, the Kings alternated Stanley Cups. I think they were a 6th seed the one year, and they were an 8th seed the other year because nobody could score on Jonathan Quick. They just couldn't score. And I mean, if it was one of those things, like he was so good that if the Kings scored 2 goals, you were like, we're going to lose. Like we're just not going to win this game. And they won 2 Stanley Cups. I mean, it's funny it happens.
You said that because the question I was just about to ask you is off the top of your head. What goaltender do you remember going on the best playoff run ever?
Quick is up there. Marty Brodeur, obviously. Hasek was on a couple, if you're being honest with yourself, a couple really bad teams that he took to, the Stanley Cup or the Eastern Conference Finals because he was, he literally, putting, truth to the term of standing on your head. Like he still made a couple saves that, he didn't even know where the hell the puck was. He was just flailing his legs and stuff, and it would hit him. Like, they're the most recent ones I can think of. Again, Bob took a very, I don't want to say mediocre, but not a great Columbus team to the Stanley Cup Finals. He played out of his mind that year. Or he said quit.
I looked it up, and
I was going to say the one that comes to mind of recent would be Price a few years ago.
The one I looked up that came up.
Carey's just tough because when Carey is, I mean, he's dealing with some like mental stuff now, but when Carey Price had that like 3 or 4 year run, he was just the best goalie on the planet. So like he wasn't, I don't want to say he was playing any differently. He was just playing like Carey Price. I'm not taking anything away from him because he was that good, but I don't know.
The 2 greatest performances that are listed online are 86 Montreal Canadiens with Patrick Roy.
Yeah, if you're going back that far, Patrick Roy for sure.
And then in 2003, New Jersey Devils with Marty Brodeur when he had 7 shutouts in one postseason.
Yeah.
Highest save percentage in he had the highest save, 934 save percentage in a postseason ever.
Yeah. So you're figuring you need 16 wins to win the Stanley Cup. So 7 of the games he told us he went out and made his team only score 1 goal to win a game. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's the best goalie ever, in my opinion.
Marty Brodeur?
Yeah.
I think the most dominant goaltender of all time so if we're talking about, like, let's just say Marty Brodeur is the Walter Payton of running backs. Like, I think that the Barry Sanders running back's Dominic Hasek. I think Dominic Hasek at his top, at his peak, was the best goaltender I've ever seen in my life. What he did that one Olympics for the Czech Republic was absolutely absurd. He stood on his head with a team that had no business hanging with the Canadians, hanging with the Americans, hanging with the Russians. He stood on his head for Buffalo time and time again. The Dominator, Dominik Hasek, was my favorite goaltender ever, and he was just different, man.
I think Hasek had that like crazy peak for 3 or 4 years where he was definitely in that conversation. The thing for me with Brodeur was
he did it for 20 years.
He did it for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, we saw it firsthand. I mean, even that one year we thought we finally had them beat. We were up 3-1.
Yep. Lindros got knocked out.
Lindros came back and had a crazy, hadn't played in like 3 months, comes on the ice. He's instantly just the best player on the ice, gets knocked out at the beginning of the second period. And then Martin Brodeur just slammed the door shut. I think 2 games in a row we didn't score, and then they beat us in game 7, like 4-2 or something. But it really wasn't that.
Scott Stevens, Lindros went right across the middle with his head down, and Scott Stevens laid him out, and that was the end of Eric Lindros.
Night.
The end of his career. That was it.
Yeah, I mean he is definitely on the list of the best like what ifs.
Yeah,
when it comes to injuries.
Who's a big fun question? Who's a bigger what if? Right, done. We're done hockey in a minute. We'll give our predictions for the. Who's a bigger what if? Right, Grant Hill or Eric Lindros?
That's a good one.
Right.
I feel like you saw that somewhere.
Made it up on the spot.
Damn. I'm going to say Lindros, and that's
I agree with you.
And I say it because I think Grant Hill would have been great. I don't think Grant Hill ever would have been the best player in the sport. And when Lindros was healthy and right, you can make that argument.
Grant Hill was the absolute prototype. Like, that would have been the best nickname for him, too, the prototype.
Yeah.
If he would have stayed healthy. But, all righty, let's give our predictions. Do the Cinderella Cats, the Florida Panthers, have what it takes to take on the absolute playoff juggernaut of the Vegas Golden Knights? I will start, and I will have a very similar reaction that I had to the Miami Heat. I really liked what the Florida Panthers have done, but the buzzsaw is here. But I'm going to go Vegas Golden Knights in 6.
Yeah, I think the clock's about to strike midnight for these Florida Panthers. I am rolling with Vegas as well. I do think that Vegas wins the series. I'm gonna go Vegas in 5. I think they find a way to get this thing over with rather quickly.
There is a crazy amount of similarities between the NBA Finals and the NHL Finals.
Isn't there?
And I feel bad for all these fans in the Miami area because I think they're, I think it's like Christmas Eve and they're all sitting at home thinking about what if, and we might have 2 parades in like 2 weeks, and this could be the craziest thing to ever happen, and it'll be the first team to ever do it.
Then they wake up with coal in their stockings.
They're gonna wake up with a big fat nothing probably. I think Vegas is going to do it in a similar fashion, to Denver. I think Bobrovsky is more than capable of stealing a game or 2 for Florida. I think Matthew Tkachuk has been great. I don't think that top line is going to have the success against Vegas as they have against other teams. And I think Vegas has 3 lines that can score, and I just like their depth way too much. I'm going to give Bob his due. I was one of the few people that actually been proven right. I was very pissed off when we traded him because I said we made that mistake. He's proven that we made a mistake way too many times. But I like Vegas in 6. I just think top to bottom of the better team. I think Matthew Tkachuk again. I think we'll have a good series. I just don't think it's going to be enough because I think Vegas just has 3 lines that can score, and I don't like Florida's defense in the bottom half. So.
Final question of the night before we get in the hot stove.
I do have one more. I got an NHL question too after you're done, Gene.
Then you go because I want the final one.
Okay, cool. So obviously, Vegas, rather new team here. We saw the Kraken in the playoffs this year. Vegas only got like 5-6 years under their belt. They're still fairly new. My question is, obviously I'm the casual hockey guy here. Do we see the expansion teams usually have this much success this early on? I get it, 5 to 6 years is long enough for you to get your footing, but the Kraken made their stand already.
You got to
remember Vegas started off hot.
Vegas made the Stanley Cup Finals their first season. You got to remember that.
In the NHL, let me answer because Shalley's going to have the answer, and I'm going to be wrong or right. But in the NHL, I think they do their expansion drafts way better than they do in any other sport.
Bingo.
And I think that they allow you to pick apart players from different teams, and they allow you to pick for need as opposed to you get our scraps, right? Correct. So I think that allows expansion teams to become better quicker.
It is the one thing, Gene's 100% right. It is the one thing that the NHL absolutely nails spot on. If you're bringing a new team in, the worst thing you can do is have them suck for 4 years. Anytime there's an expansion team starting, you can only protect a certain amount of players on your roster, and then everybody else that you don't protect is eligible to be picked. Now, sometimes they can cut deals, and this is what Vegas did in Seattle. Seattle took the blueprint from it with it as well. And that's why you saw Seattle take that big leap in the second year. They'll cut backdoor deals where, like, hey, like the Flyers, for instance, like, hey, we're not going to protect Jacob Voracek. If you don't take him or you do take him, we'll buy him back from you pretty much for like a second-round pick or something like that. So then at that point, you're picking the best team that you think you can put on the ice, you do have to hit a floor for the salary cap. But also allows you to accumulate a bunch of first and second round draft picks for the next 2 or 3 years as well. So it's real quick. You can build real fast. And the NHL does a great job with it. So that is why you're seeing what you're seeing.
All right. So here's my question, and it's an NBA/NHL question. Which Florida team do you give the better chance to win the championship? The Miami Heat or the Florida Panthers?
For me, I go with the Panthers. I think if you could beat a team like Boston, you have the ability to beat a Vegas team. Obviously, the matchups are different, but I think with this Miami team, Miami Heat team, I really don't see a path for them to win that series. So I'll go with Florida Panthers.
I'm actually going to go against Cottrell on this one. I think it's the Heat. And I say that because I think if they can steal the game, again, we've all talked about Spoelstra. I think Spoelstra's good enough to steal them a game somewhere else and then at least make it a dogfight, turn it into a 3-game series. I think that's possible. I just don't know where Florida – I just don't see the production coming enough off other than the top line for Florida, who's going to go against Vegas's top line, which is very good. I just don't know, I just don't know whether I'm going to get the production enough to stay in those games.
I don't know enough, but I will say Florida Panthers has a better chance. But
that's kind of where I'm at too, Gene. So,
all right. So let's get into some fun stuff. MLB hot stove. I don't know what's coming. Cottrell doesn't know what's coming. That's why it's the hot stove. And Shalley has prepared us a list of questions, and I'm ready.
You got 7, maybe.
All right, good.
Post-Memorial Day hot stove, wire-to-wire edition.
They say the baseball season doesn't start until the end of Memorial Day weekend.
You got it. You're right. Who ends up with more wins, Tampa Bay or Atlanta?
Atlanta.
Yeah, I think Atlanta also. I think Atlanta's the best team in baseball, and I can't believe they lost 2 straight games to Oakland.
They are winning right now, but
See?
I agree.
We talked about that. We talked about it last week, and Oakland's about to find a way. They're about to find a way to reel off like 6 out of 10.
They were like 15 straight losses.
Yeah,
I know. I'm just saying. We're talking about
34 wins right now.
To break the record, though, like we were saying, like
they're about to go on a little streak and win 6 out of 10 for no reason.
If like you were saying, like if you're looking at that piece of paper, their schedule all printed out, you're like, they've lost 15 in a row. You got Atlanta coming to town. You're like, well, there's 4 more. But now we're at 19, and then like lo and behold, like I said was going to happen. Baseball's funny like that. They go and be either 1 or 1A, baseball team. They take 2 of the first 3 games of the series. They are losing right now, though. Atlanta's winning right now, but that's just craziness. Did anybody see the funny meme today about the kid running on the field in Oakland?
No,
I did not.
Oh, this kid literally runs out of the stands and runs completely around the bases the backwards way.
Oh, I did see that.
And not like one person from security or the groundskeepers are like out, like getting the boxes ready. Like nobody pays this kid any mind. And like the whole caption is just like, even Oakland's like security has given up. Like nobody cares. The kid's just on the field. Like nobody cares.
I can't wait until they're the Vegas A's.
It's going to be cool.
I think they change it. Instead of being the A's, they go to the Vegas Aces.
They're not going to be the Aces because of the WNBA team.
I'm just saying it makes a lot of sense.
They got to get their own copyright.
Yeah. Don't say anything that's going to get us in trouble, Gene, because you had that look on your face.
Maybe.
I don't even know what that means.
I do. I can just see, like, I know what he wanted to say, and I'm glad he didn't say it. Who's been the most disappointing team so far this year?
Oh, this is another easy one. Go ahead, Control.
I mean, shit, for me, it's the Guardians, but in reality,
it's the New York Mets, bro. The New York Mets are the most disappointing team in baseball right now. The New York Mets are under 500 with a roster that has 2 $40 million pitchers.
I get it.
No way. They're it's the Mets.
Verlander's somewhat new back to the rotation, though. And I'm not saying that excuses them for being as bad as they have been, but
bro, he doesn't have a quality start yet. He got shelled again the other day.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's 2 real answers, and Gene got one of them. I think it's the Mets and the Padres. I think the Padres are slowly starting to look like they're supposed to look, but I mean, for them not to even, be where they're supposed to be. I mean, I think those are the 2 answers, but I think
the Mets are just a game above 500 after beating the Phillies yesterday.
For me, just to give a different answer than you guys, I'll go with the Cardinals just because I expect them to be a playoff team, and they just started off so slow, and I get it. They're trending towards the right direction, but I was not expecting them to be as far back as they were in the NL Central. So I'll go with the Cardinals.
That's a good segue. We got Segway Simpson on the show tonight. Which 2 teams come out of the subpar Central divisions in both leagues?
I still think listen. I am sticking with it until it's proven to be wrong. I will still go with the over 500 Pittsburgh Pirates, and I'm going to go with the Twins.
So I'm going to go with 2 completely different teams. I'm going to roll with the Cardinals. I think they find a way to get all the way back before season's end. And I'm going to roll with the Chicago White Sox.
Who was your AL team?
The White Sox.
Wow.
They've been terrible.
That whole division is terrible. But
yeah,
I'm going to go with the Cardinals as well, and I'll get more into that, in a couple questions. But I'm going with Gene as well in the AL. I think the Twins pulled out. I mean, they're just the only ones that I kind of look at and have any kind of faith that if you put them in like a playoff game, they would at least play, or playoff series, they would at least play a couple good games. They should get close.
Says the Las Vegas Spades with the capital A. That might make sense. I think they should keep the A, like the A's. You just shouldn't be the Athletics. I think if you're moving to Vegas, you get a new brand and you build it around the fact that Vegas is a gambling team. And that's why I said Aces, because you could put like Aces with pitchers, Aces.
I totally understand what you're saying. It's like I said, the WNBA team already has it.
I say you just stick with A's then. Just know.
Yeah, I mean, because the Raiders didn't change anything when they went there. The Knights really don't have anything to do with Vegas per se. It'll be interesting. I mean, they went from the Philadelphia Athletics, they went out to Oakland, and they kept it. So, I mean, I don't think Major League Baseball wants them to change it.
Athletics is such a dated name, though, at this point, right?
You're not wrong about that. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm just curious to see if they change their colors.
Gotta. Be black and green. You keep the green, but you go with the little black and green.
And yellow? Keep the yellow too?
Oh, God.
Maybe not.
Okay.
Drop the yellow, add the black. Indoor retractable stadium. You have the temperature controlled.
No,
Charles like, just kidding. Just kidding.
They sound like knights.
Yeah, which the hockey team already took. This was an interesting debate that I had today with a couple other people, and I think it's maybe happened a handful of times in the history of baseball, which is saying a lot. Should a team be allowed to make the playoffs with a losing record?
Yes.
I don't disagree. I think the AL is going to be the huge argument because you're most likely going to have two teams from the AL East with really good records that are not going to get in.
But you're going to have a central team.
Not my problem.
Facts. And I mean, I don't know when the latest time that it's happened in baseball, but you've seen teams win playoff games.
I don't think it's ever happened in baseball. Ever.
I didn't delve that much into it. I'll look it up and we can come back to it next show. I'm not sure. I'll go to the next question. Who do you have more faith in keeping their current pace? The Baltimore Orioles or the Texas Rangers?
Texas Rangers.
What'd you say, Gene?
Orioles.
Why? For both of you.
So mine is because I think the Texas Rangers are absolute. I think they're running on fumes. I think the Baltimore Orioles have a great young core, great young talent. With their catcher Rushman, Cedric Mullins, Mountcastle. I think they have a good core in their lineup, and I think they have a pitching staff that's deeper. With the Texas Rangers, you have DeGrom, who's hurt half the season all the time, and a very, very suspect pitching staff. Nathan Eovaldi is suspect. A lot of these guys in that Rangers rotation are suspect.
Eovaldi's having a great year, dude.
He is, but my point being is he's a suspect pitcher.
I say the Rangers because ultimately, the Orioles are playing great baseball right now. That AL East, it's already been great top end wise, but I expect the Yankees, the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox are going to have something to say about the division, throughout the rest of the season. And I think with this Rangers team, I think we're seeing kind of what they are. And I'm not saying the Orioles are just going to fall off a cliff, but I do think that later in the season, you are going to just that wear of being in that AL East, I think is going to wear on them, and you're going to see them start to slow down a little bit. So I'll go with the Rangers.
I have your answer. As it stands, no team in Major League Baseball history has made the playoffs with a losing record in a full season. The 2005 Padres, who won the National League West with a record of 82-80, hold the distinction of the fewest wins by a playoff team. The 2006 Cardinals, who went 83-78, hold the record for the fewest wins for a World Series champion.
So we might. There's a chance we see history this year. Interesting. I'm going to go with the Rangers for two reasons. I like the way their pitching staff is kind of, for lack of a better, treading water without Jacob deGrom. I do like their lineup. I love Baltimore. Don't get me wrong. I love Baltimore. I love their lineup. I love the story. I think it would be one of the best storylines of the entire season if they make the playoffs. I hate that they're in the AL East. And I hate that Kyle Gibson is their number one. We all know what he looks like for the Phillies. We all know he's going to eventually probably come back down to earth. I just don't know if they have the rotation as it stands right now to stay in that race the way they are right now. Cedric Mullins is playing out of his mind. Like you said, Adley Rushman is playing great. I love their core. I just don't know. I think the competition in the East is way, way tougher over the course of the year than the AL West is going to be.
Yeah, but the one thing that you're forgetting is they don't play the East the way they normally play them. With the new schedules, the way they're set up, they play every team in baseball, so they get to play these crap divisions, whereas the West has to play the AL East. Yeah.
Everybody, I read this today. That's the only reason I'm going to say it. Everybody in the AL East still has 30 games again, at least 30 games left against the division. Tampa Bay has the most at 35, I believe, and then everybody else was at least 30.
Okay.
So there's a lot left. You're not wrong. It's definitely going to help compared to what it would be normally, because that number would be a lot higher. But again, I'm rooting for Baltimore. I just think the answer is going to end up being Texas. Out of the teams currently not in a playoff spot, who do you have the most confidence in playing their way back in?
The Phillies.
That is my answer as well.
And I'll tell you why it's the Phillies. The Philadelphia Phillies are going to – I feel like there was a game that just happened recently where the Phillies were down 5-0, came back, won the game, and they take 2 out of 4 from Atlanta in Atlanta. They look like they're hitting that stride. They look like they're starting to be the Phillies again. I think the Phillies come hitting weather are going to rake, and I think the Phillies go on a huge run in the end of June, early July.
Yeah, I mean, you guys will have, hopefully at some point Trey Turner is going to get back to being Trey Turner, and Bryce is going to get back to being Bryce Harper. So that makes a lot of sense for sure. But I just don't want to say the exact same answer as you guys. So I'll go with the Padres. I just think that they're too talented to miss the playoffs. I think ultimately they're going to get it together enough to get them into the playoffs. At this point, it's going to be a wild card spot, but I think they're going to get into the playoffs.
All right, last one. Who is the first big name superstar to get traded?
The first
is different than the biggest.
Yeah.
Corbin Burns.
That is my answer.
I think Milwaukee's just begging to blow it up. And I think they're going to take a team that needs a starting pitcher. They're going to take the king's ransom for Corbin Burns.
They have Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and somebody else on that team, I think. I think the problem is, I think they're staying in first, so I think the fan base is going to go nuts. And a lot of that, again, this is the part I was talking about earlier. I think St. Louis getting off to such a terrible start. I think if Milwaukee was 5 or 6 games back already, they'd be like, you know what, like this is the time to do it. Like you said, like we are going to maximize what we can get for Corbin Burns, and really set this team up to be really good again in 2 years. And I think the fans would have had to been okay with that. But now they're sitting in first or a game out, and teams are like, oh, well, we're going to make the playoffs now. Like, how are you going to trade everybody? So I think it's going to be very interesting. But Corbin Burns is still my answer.
It's interesting. 3 people came to mind. Corbin Burns is one of them. I think it'll be a race to see who starts to slow down first between the Brewers and the Angels, because I think Shohei is still big on that list, but the Angels aren't awfully far off pace in the AOS. So, but I think Shane Bieber could be the first one that gets moved, because he's not having a great year, and the Guardians aren't going to re-sign him anyway. So I think if the right team calls and gives you just a decent offer, I think they were looking to move him anyway. So I could see the Guards getting rid of Shane Bieber, but I'll keep it fun though. I'll go Shohei Ohtani. Shohei gets moved.
I'll tell you a guy that gets moved off the Cleveland Guardians if they don't make a move, if they don't make a run soon. I think they signed Josh Bell to be a guy to protect J Ram in the lineup. And if they are not in the playoff race within another 3 to 4 weeks, I think he gets traded. I think he's gone. I think they will dump him as fast as they signed him. Just an opinion, though.
I mean, I could definitely see that. I mean, Josh Bell, I'll say this. For Josh Bell, he'll be in a very similar situation as Franmil Reyes was a few years ago in Cleveland. So I could definitely see them. They wasted no time cutting bait with Reyes, so I could definitely see that as well.
And he's done terrible for Cleveland. He's batting like 220-something. He's only got 4 home runs. That's not what you signed him to do. He's supposed to be protection in your lineup, and he's not. He's not been that. He's been awful. But that's just, my opinion. Is that it, Joe?
That's it.
All right. So
who was you say Corbin was yours too, Bill?
Yeah, Corbin's been mine since from the beginning of the season. like Gene said, I don't think that he's under contract through 2024, but they're not going to be able to re-sign him. He's going to be like, I think 20 or 29 when his contract's up. Milwaukee cannot afford him. You're going to get the most for him if you trade him this year because who's ever trading for him is getting him for a year and a half. If you wait till next year or even the offseason, the value for him goes down. It's
100%.
So I think he gets moved this year. I really think Milwaukee's probably, behind closed doors, pissed off that they're playing as well as they are. It'd be a lot easier to just blow it up, and get, like Gene said, the king's ransom for him and Woodruff for all these teams that are going to be pitching hungry, and really set the team up to be really good again in 2 years. And now it's kind of throwing a wrench in the whole thing.
Before anybody leaves, because we still have the Women's College World Series, I want to make our announcement. We have developed a new bracket, and we are putting it together. It is the greatest sports moment of all time bracket. I am having so much fun looking these up, watching them, reliving them. If you want to, in the chat, put your favorite sports moment of all time. Hey, does the Philly special make a appearance?
It's going to be really tough to get into 64. I'm excited for the conversations we're going to have, but it is this one.
Up the D. Gordon conversation to Adrian. He goes, "That's not even a top 3 moment in Marlins history." I said, and I was flabbergasted. And I'm like, that D. Gordon home run the day after the first game they played after Jose Fernandez died. He goes, "I'm telling you right now." He's like, "That's not even the best Marlins moment."
He might not be wrong. I mean, that one's complicated, but
I can think of one that they probably enjoy a little bit more.
The Pudge.
97.
You're talking about Pudge with the ball, right?
Against the Indians.
The double play that Pudge had in that World Series, where he dropped third strike, took the runner, and took both of them like bang bang, is probably the biggest moment in Marlins history. It's a crazy, but
there's a lot, man. When you factor in like other sports and then like the Olympics, like again,
the Olympics will be up there. A lot of them.
To get it to 64 is like the stuff that's going to be left on the cutting room floor is going to be incredible. Like it's going to be nuts. It's going to be fun.
Any chance that the Padres look to move one of the 8 shortstops they have?
I mean, they're not going to move Bogarts.
They might move. They might move Tatis.
No.
I mean, I think if anybody gets moved, it'd be him.
Here's what I can tell you. I think if you would have had this conversation 2 years ago, the answer would automatically no. I think with Bogarts being there, they've already publicly came out and said they want to re-sign Manny. With the other Pete and with them having Soto, I think he's more expendable now for a Corbin Burns type pitcher. I think if you see something like that, I don't know if you can say no because their pitching staff is not good right now. That's the biggest reason they are not where they should be. Obviously Soto, Machado, and all those guys got off to a slow start, but I mean, Soto's raised his average 40 points in the last 2 weeks. He's starting to heat up. They're hitting the ball. Blake Snell's 1-5. Joe Musgrave is nowhere near what he was last year. Darvish got smoked the other night again. They need if they're in the market for anything, it's going to be pitching. I think if Milwaukee calls and goes, "Hey, we'll give you Corbin Burns and pieces for Tatis and pieces as being the guy we can build around," I don't know if you can say no to that. I don't.
All righty. All right, we got the moments. We're going to talk about the moments. We'll talk about the moments in the upcoming week. We're creating a bracket. We wanted to announce it with you guys. The greatest sports moment of all time. Put yours in the chat if you have one. Let's get into the Women's College World Series and another Oklahoma win. Why? You know why I say that? You guys know I'm like very big on like pick the underdog and find the Cinderella team, and Florida State can do it or Tennessee can do it. And the thing about the Women's College World Series is, yeah, they can put it together and beat Oklahoma in one game.
Yep.
The problem is they're so deep, and you're not going to beat them twice. And you have to beat Oklahoma twice to get them out. And then you have to beat them twice when they're in the finals. So
that to me is the most important part. Beating them 2 out of 3 times in the finals is tough enough. You can't let them sit in the winner's bracket to get there. I think if you can make them lose early somehow and then make them use up a lot of pitching just to get to the finals, I think you have a shot. If not, I think you're going to see a three-peat. I think it's only the 3rd time it's ever happened. I think Florida State is the one team that could beat them. Their number 1 pitcher is a stud. And I think they hit enough. I think Tennessee's a little bit of the dark horse for me that could maybe weasel their way in. I'm picking Oklahoma, though.
Yeah, I'm picking Oklahoma, too.
Yeah,
And it's not against. Yeah, Control. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say I don't know how you could pick against Oklahoma at this point.
No, and I look at the other teams, and a perennial powerhouse like Alabama is on a down year. They're there, but they're not the same team as they always are.
They squeaked to get in.
Stanford shouldn't have got in. What was it? Cal or Oregon? One of the teams in the West was way better, and Stanford basically beat them out. Washington. Sorry. I don't know. I don't follow it as much as I should, but I did research today when we were going to talk about it. And that
pitcher for Stanford is incredible, though. She led the nation this year in ERA. She's very good. But again, Stanford just isn't going to hit enough to beat Oklahoma. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
I will say of the teams that are playing, the only other team outside of Oklahoma that I have seen play rather recently would be that Florida State. I saw them dog walk Georgia, a few days ago. It was 7 or 8-1, and they were all over Georgia, and they looked phenomenal doing so. So I would say, that would be the one team, I guess, that I know of that would be able to at least compete a little bit with Oklahoma. But that's just, like I said, from what I've seen. Florida
State is the other team I have in the finals. They have been eliminated by Oklahoma in the last 2 years, once in the finals and then once in a semi. It is, if anybody's got a personal beef with Oklahoma, it's Florida State. So we'll see. It would be cool. For me anyway, this is a can't lose situation. You're going to watch Oklahoma win and win in three-peat. Like I said, I think it's only the 3rd time it'll have ever happened. Or like Gene said, you get to watch the little David knock off the Goliath, and that will be fun to watch in its own right because it'll be pandemonium. I wish they would almost switch where they hold it every year because it's literally a built-in insane home field advantage for Oklahoma right now because they hold it in Oklahoma City every single year. But I'm gonna watch it. Like I said, it's last year, 5th straight year the ratings have been up. They spaced it out a little bit more this year, which is good because you're going to have more rest for the pitchers. So you'll see it more often. And it'll be fun to watch. There's always drama. So I'm looking forward to it.
Let's get into You Gotta Be Kidding Me. Control?
So this week, I don't really think I have one. Nobody's
prepared.
Nobody's gotten to me this week. Normally I have stuff, but this week we're on a down week. NFL, nobody's messed me up. The UFC, everybody's been cool, so I'm good this week.
Hate to do it, but I'm gonna say the same thing. Nobody really got under my skin. I'm not doing golf again. I was gonna do Brandon Chambly and that whole debacle, but I don't feel like giving the dude any more airtime.
The only one that I could even there's no one that's normally, if I do my you gotta be kidding me, I gotta be somewhat passionate about. And the only thing that even comes to mind for me is the Patriots getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar again.
That's mine.
See? Now I'm not gonna steal
I'm
not gonna steal your thunder. So
way to go, Kachuk.
All right,
go ahead.
We'll talk about the Patriots and putting their hand in the cookie jar again. Bill Belichick spoke on this again. He says it's in
There's
the
nothing wrong with
past,
cookies.
and they got fined again. Look, one time is a mistake. Twice is, coincidence. 5 times at this point, it's a trend, man. It's a trend. The New England Patriots are absolute cheaters. Belichick takes full blame for the Patriots' OTA violation. They got caught in Spygate. They got caught in Deflategate. Spygate 2. The New England Patriots have been caught cheating by the NFL, violating rules. 7 different occasions since 1999. They have been docked, money, fined, practices, or suspended team organizations 5 times. And that's not counting PEDs. That's me taking PEDs out. This is organizational cheating, organizational mishaps where it comes to losing draft picks, compensation. This is the 5th time that's happened.
Don't forget about Aaron Hernandez. He killed people.
But that's not an organizational thing. That's an individual thing. I'm just keeping it to organizational things. If I added the individual things, then the New England fan base and the Boston fan base would be like, yourteamcheats.com and talk about people that have steroid issues and this and that. It's all the time at this point. And I don't know how many times you can get your hand caught in a cookie jar before somebody just takes your hand out of it.
Billy B got a sweet tooth.
My guy. The New England
Billy B
this week are my you gotta be kidding me. So
on, you gotta be kidding me.
Billy B likes them.
By the way, I was kind of hoping someone used Tyler Boyd because that was a really stupid comment too.
I
didn't.
It was like I think with that one it was more like stupid. It didn't really piss me off.
What did Tyler Boyd do?
He said that if he was healthy, that they would have beat the Chiefs. And I hate comments like that because in the AFC Championship game, the players that are healthy are 0. I don't mean to be a smart ass when I say this. Every team is dealing with injuries.
Yeah. And I don't know in any game that I've ever said, hey, if your number 3 receiver was healthy, you would have won. So not hearing him on that one.
Fair.
Clayton Kershaw almost got put on my list, but I'm not going to dig deep into that. That's one of those.
That one's a mess.
It's what that is? It's not your job to talk about it. So shut up. That's what my thing is, right? Clayton Kershaw's job is not to talk about that. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, it's not your job to speak up on it.
Wow, wait, time out on that. That whole thing to me is complicated for numerous reasons. I don't have a problem with anybody speaking out against it. I mean, we like this, let's not be like shut up and dribble.
No.
He spoke out against it because he feels, and I think he also looks at it. He's been, for lack of a better term, been the face of that franchise going on 10, 12 years, whatever it is. And he felt like he could speak out against it.
If you don't know what we're talking about, Clayton Kershaw disagrees with the Los Angeles Dodgers' decision to welcome an LGBTQIA+ group called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence at the team's annual Pride Night. Kershaw told the LA Times on Monday that the team's decision to honor the group after it rescinded its original invitation prompted him to approach the Dodgers about expediting the announcement that the team is bringing back Christian Faith and Family Day later this season. I think we're always going to do Christian Faith Day this year, but I think that the timing of our announcement was sped up. Picking a date and doing those different things was a part of it as well. Yes, it was a response to highlighting the Sisters of Perpetual Intelligence by the Dodgers. Kershaw announced via Twitter last Friday that the Christian Faith and Family Day will be held July 30th when the Dodgers face the Cincinnati Reds. The last time it was held was in 2019. Kershaw, who has been with the organization since he's been drafted in 2006, said his issues with were with the sisters and not with the LGBTQIA plus community. He also added he will not boycott Pride Night on the 16th when the Dodgers face the San Francisco Giants. I just wanted to read you what I was talking about.
Yeah. He has an issue with that specific group, which is what led them to cancel it from the get-go. It's the whole thing. It's complicated. It's weird. It's a group that makes fun of, kind of makes light of certain situations while still raising awareness for those groups. So it's kind of like a backwards type, like they're achieving their goal in a backwards type way.
I understand. It's just like one of those things where, like, to announce, I don't know. I'm gonna stay away from it. Let's end the show. Any final thoughts, Cottrell?
I got nothing this week. I'm looking forward to this these finals matchups, but I'm kind of sad at the same time. College football will be here before I know it, but kind of sad.
Under 100 days, baby.
Any final thoughts?
We're doing college football.
Shall we?
We're doing college football previews before you know it.
Can't wait.
No, I mean, another great show. It's a fun show. Next week should be the same. We got UFC. What else we got next week? We got the Belmont. I don't know, it might be like a whopping 4 horses in that race next week by the time they start. With NBA finals, NHL finals, hopefully the bracket. But like Cottrell said, man, we're starting to get itchy for football.
Well, I'll be cheesy. I'll end the show with a shout out to the Memorial Day softball champions. But follow me why I'm doing this. All right, I promised you there's a little bit less, there's a little bit less annoyance to this. Just follow me. So Jay Payne, Tess Frelick, Shane Hanna, John Motz, Billy Brancato, Mandy Sheehan, Ian Kuzo, Tom Ryder, Gene Walzak, Glenn Stratus, Nick Piggott, and Paul Connor. I skipped one name on that list. And that one name I skipped was Chris Smedley Pulley. And the reason I skipped her name is I wanted to highlight her at the end. Chris Pulley has been in Softball America since 2001 when it's inception. She's played in every one pitch except 2. She was 0-40 in one pitch tournaments up until this past Sunday, and the curse was broken. She is now 1-40 in one pitch tournaments, and I wanted to shout her out. Game ball was given to her at the end of the game, and she's awesome. If you've ever met Schmeds, it's funny because she has the most iconic curse word after every at bat. I won't bring it up, but it's funny. But shout out to Chris. I know Michael Robert Lafferty listens to the show a lot.
Yep, it's her son.
Yep, so I just wanted to.
She's awesome. I've played on teams with her. She throws the best Christmas party you'll ever go to that we have every year. She's an amazing human being. She's funny. She's a great teammate. I'm happy. I didn't know that she had never won one. I just figured that she did because she's played in so many and been in the league forever. So I'm happy that she finally got off the schneid. And like Gene said, it couldn't happen to a better person. She's one of my favorite people in that entire league. Her and her husband Ron. So congratulations to everybody on, what were you, team 8?
Yep, team 8.
Yep. Congratulations to everybody on team 8. They were one of my dark horse picks. So they were. Gene called me and did his reverse psychology, and he's like, I don't like our team, and like I hadn't looked at the rosters yet, and I looked.
I didn't like our team. I said it's going to be tough to win with the infield we had. We had the fatties in the infield, and if we're being honest with it, our combined weight between our third baseman, shortstop, first baseman, and pitcher was up there. Okay, we all knew it. We all joked about it.
Fat Nani.
You play
But-
short, Gene?
No, I play third, which I shouldn't ever play third. I'm left-handed. It's not an easy position for me to play. But you do what you got to do to win.
Yeah.
I sat all of 2 innings throughout the 8 games that we played, which led to a very sore Monday, if I'm being honest. But
pain was worth it. Yeah, Gene didn't say he hated his team, but he was just like, man, like I don't know how we match up. And like I looked at it, I was like, I actually like your team. I said from the get-go, I thought you were gonna have a very good outfield and you guys were gonna hit. And you did that. I'm assuming Ryder pitched.
Yeah, Ryder pitched a hell of a day.
I mean, the best men's pitcher in the league. So you were one of my dark horse picks. I'm not surprised you guys won. And Jay Payne's a great teammate and a great captain. So very well done. Congratulations to everyone. I haven't decided if I'm going to play the Labor Day one yet or not.
Well,
but
I
we'll
will
see.
be there. And with that, this is episode 138. Give us a download on Spotify, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. 1,100 downloads in the month of May. Another month cracking over 1,000. Let's get us to that 15 mark. I want to get to the 15 mark by September because when football hits, we'll get back. I'm telling you, we're going to have a 2,000 download month before the end of the year. So thank you very much for tuning in. Wire Sports Podcast. I'm Gene Walzak. That's Kishal Simpson. Scholastic Shally. Have a great night.